Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving into a fascinating and controversial topic that has intrigued people for centuries: the origins of hell as we know it today. We'll explore how this concept evolved over time and question if the image of hellfire, brimstone, eternal suffering was part of an ancient agenda. Could hell have been invented by the church for reasons beyond spiritual teachings? Stick around as we uncover the shocking truth behind one of history's most terrifying ideas. Hey, have you ever wondered why the concept of hell has such a powerful grip on us? This terrifying fiery pit, where souls are supposedly tormented forever, it's a horrifying image. But here's the surprising truth. The idea of hell, as most people know it today, was likely shaped and intensified by the church itself. Ancient beliefs were transformed into a doctrine of eternal punishment. Why? Let's dive in. When you look at the original teachings of Jesus, there's actually no mention of a torturous realm of endless suffering. Instead, he talks about Gehenna, a real place outside Jerusalem where garbage was burned, a physical location, not some mystical underworld. So why did Jesus use Gehenna as a warning? In his time, it served as a brutal reminder of the consequences of turning away from compassion and righteousness. But Gehenna wasn't described as a place of eternal damnation. No fire and pitchforks, no demons torturing the wicked forever. Those vivid images came much, much later. In ancient Jewish tradition, there's no concept of an eternal hell like the one many of us grew up imagining. So where did it come from? Let's keep digging and find out. Imagine this: instead of a fiery pit of torture, ancient beliefs described the afterlife as something much calmer. Take Sheol, for instance, a shadowy realm where everyone, good or bad, simply existed in a state of rest or sleep. No torment, no punishment, just stillness. Even in Greek mythology, Hades wasn't a place of eternal suffering for everyone. It had different levels. Some were dark and grim, but others were peaceful resting places. So how did we go from this neutral concept of an underworld to a terrifying, fiery hell? Here's the kicker: it was used as a tool. By the 3rd century, the church saw how powerful fear could be in shaping people's behavior. By creating an image of hell as a place of fire, anguish, and eternal punishment, the church could wield control over the masses. Imagine a priest standing before a crowd, warning them, disobey, and you risk an eternity in hell. That kind of fear sticks. It digs into the mind, making people more likely to obey. And once that fear takes hold, it's hard to shake. Hell didn't just become a spiritual threat, it became psychological leverage. By the Middle Ages, hell was fully weaponized in paintings, sermons, literature, everywhere. Just think about how much that has shaped society. The church crafted this terrifying image of hell, a place so horrifying it would haunt people's minds. But let's be clear, this wasn't about faith. This was about power. The church's teachings on hell? Almost nowhere to be found in the earliest biblical texts. Early Christian communities emphasized love, forgiveness, and a merciful God. But once the fear of eternal damnation was introduced, the church gained an unprecedented level of control. When you control people's beliefs, you control their lives. Let's start with Gehenna. In Jesus' time, Gehenna wasn't a supernatural underworld. It was a real place, the Valley of Hinnom, just outside Jerusalem. And it wasn't a punishment for the dead, it was a trash dump where waste was burned. Imagine the stench, the constant smoke, the fire devouring what was discarded. That's the imagery Jesus used when he spoke of Gehenna, a place where things were destroyed, not tortured forever. It was a powerful metaphor warning against moral decay, a reminder of what could happen if people rejected compassion and justice. But an eternal torture chamber? Not even close. Then there's Sheol, the underworld of the Hebrew Bible. But Sheol wasn't like the hell we know today. In Hebrew scripture, Sheol is described as a shadowy place where everyone goes after death, a realm of stillness, not torment. There's no eternal punishment, no fiery pits. So how did we end up with the horrifying hell we know now? That's where things get interesting. When it came to the afterlife, ancient beliefs weren't about fiery punishment or eternal suffering. Take Sheol, for instance. In ancient Jewish thought, Sheol was where everyone went after death, the good, the bad, everyone. It was more of a resting place, almost like a void. No joy, no pain, no flames, no torment, just silence and stillness. Sheol wasn't a threat. It was simply the final destination, a natural end to life, not a place of punishment. Then there's Hades, the Greek underworld, which later influenced Christian ideas. In Greek culture, Hades was the realm of the dead, but it wasn't necessarily a place of suffering. It was a divided kingdom with different realms for different souls. Some areas were dark and shadowy, yes, but others were more like peaceful resting places. Hades wasn't viewed as evil, it was just where the dead resided. But as Christianity spread, ideas from Sheol, Gehenna, and Hades began to blend together. And as the church's influence grew, these concepts were amplified and reshaped into the terrifying hell we know today. The burning fires of Gehenna, the mystery of Hades, and the inevitability of Sheol were woven together, creating a powerful image that would shape religious beliefs for centuries. The church took ancient ideas about the unknown afterlife and built them into something far darker, a place of horror, crafted to enforce its doctrines. Originally, these ideas weren't about endless torture. They were simply about the natural consequences of life, about rest, or perhaps a journey beyond. When we think of hell as a place of eternal suffering, we're actually looking at a concept shaped more by philosophers than by the teachings of Jesus or the Hebrew Scriptures. It was early church thinkers like Tertullian and Augustine who began to solidify this vision of hell as eternal torment. They weren't just theologians, they were influencers, setting the spiritual agenda for generations to come. Tertullian, one of the church's earliest and most impactful writers, strongly promoted the idea of eternal punishment. He saw hell as not just a place for the wicked, but almost as a theater of suffering. Tertullian even claimed that the righteous would witness the damned suffering in hell. Imagine the psychological impact of that. He spread the notion that eternal punishment wasn't just a divine necessity, but something the saved could actually take satisfaction in witnessing. This wasn't about justice. It was about constructing a truly disturbing image, one that would strike deep into people's minds. Fear and obedience, those were powerful tools. Enter Augustine of Hippo, one of the most influential thinkers in Christian history. Augustine's ideas on sin, guilt, and punishment would shape Western Christianity for centuries. He's the one who solidified the idea of hell as a place of endless punishment, no chance for parole, no hope for redemption. For Augustine, hell was proof of God's justice, a way to balance the scales for every act of sin, big or small. But Augustine wasn't coming up with these ideas on his own. He was heavily influenced by Greek philosophy, especially Plato. He took Greek concepts about the soul, justice, and punishment and wove them into Christian doctrine. Here's the twist: none of this came from the teachings of Jesus or early Judaism. It was a philosophical project, a human attempt to make sense of divine justice by any means necessary. Augustine was also fighting a cultural battle. He wanted Christianity to become the dominant moral authority in an empire crumbling under its own weight. And the doctrine of eternal torture? It was convenient. It helped him and the church gain control. If you could make people fear that every misstep would be paid for with endless suffering, you held incredible power over them. Fear like that sticks, and once it takes hold, it's nearly impossible to shake. Now, let's get to the heart of it. Why did the church push such a terrifying image of hell? To understand, we need to look at the historical context. In medieval Europe, the church wasn't just a religious institution. It was the most powerful force in society, holding sway over kings, nations, and the entire social order. And what better way to keep people in line than with the looming threat of hellfire? For centuries, literacy rates were low, and most people couldn't read the scriptures for themselves. They relied entirely on what the church told them. Priests, bishops, and popes held all the power. They alone decided what the people would know about God, heaven, hell, and everything in between. With this influence, they crafted sermons and doctrines that painted hell as a place of unimaginable suffering, not just for evil deeds, but for even the smallest deviation from church teachings. In essence, the church turned hell into a weapon, a psychological tool to instill deep fear and obedience, making people too afraid to question or stray. Hell wasn't just a concept, it became a powerful form of control. The concept of a dark, foreboding place for the souls of the dead wasn't born with Christianity. Ancient civilizations, like the Mesopotamians, Greeks, and Egyptians, had ideas of an underworld, a place for souls to go after death. However, these were often places of rest or transformation rather than eternal punishment. In Greek mythology, Hades was a realm of shadows, a neutral space rather than a place of unending torment. When early Christian writers began to shape doctrines, they drew on these concepts but adapted them in a way that emphasized moral consequences. As Christianity spread, the leaders of the early church faced the challenge of guiding their growing communities. They discovered that instilling fear could be an effective way to ensure adherence to their teachings. The idea of a fiery hell where sinners faced unimaginable torment became a useful tool to keep followers in line. Religious texts, like the Book of Revelation, with its intense imagery of the lake of fire, reinforced the notion of a terrifying afterlife for those who disobeyed. Some scholars argue that the vivid descriptions of hell helped the church establish authority over people's behavior and beliefs. The medieval period saw the church rising as a political force across Europe. With its influence, the church could command respect, resources, and loyalty from kings and commoners alike. The fear of hell became a political tool, pushing people to follow church doctrine under threat of eternal damnation. This created a powerful hierarchy where the clergy were seen as the gatekeepers to salvation. Historians believe that this institutionalization of hell was part of the church's strategy to solidify its power and secure a loyal, compliant society. Throughout the Middle Ages, images of hell were depicted vividly in church paintings, sermons, and plays, searing the concept into public imagination. Dante Alighieri's Divine Comedy, especially Inferno, painted an elaborate picture of a multi-layered hell that captured people's imaginations. With the help of such art and literature, hell transformed from a vague concept to a real, terrifying place in people's minds. These cultural representations reinforced the fear-based narrative, making hell an unavoidable part of the religious landscape. By the 16th century, as the Reformation swept through Europe, some thinkers began to challenge the church's monopoly on religious interpretation. Reformers like Martin Luther questioned not only the practices of the church, but also the doctrine itself, including the concept of hell. Some early Protestant sects started viewing hell not as a place of literal fire and torment, but rather as a state of separation from God. This re-examination opened the door for more modern interpretations, where hell became more of a metaphor than a physical place. In addition to the Bible, a range of apocryphal texts writings not officially included in the canon have played a significant role in shaping our understanding of hell. Books like the Apocalypse of Peter and the Book of Enoch contain vivid descriptions of the afterlife, including scenes of torture and punishment. Though these texts were not canonized, their influence lingered, as early Christian leaders referenced them when building theological concepts. Such texts helped solidify the visual horrors of hell, contributing to a shared cultural imagination of what awaits those who stray from the path of righteousness. The figure of Satan as the ruler of hell evolved significantly over time. In early biblical texts, Satan was more an accuser or adversary rather than a demonic overlord. However, as the church developed its doctrine, Satan became personified as the ultimate embodiment of evil and rebellion against God. In medieval art and sermons, Satan was often depicted as the Lord of Hell, ruling over a realm of fire and despair. This shift allowed the church to portray hell as not only a place of punishment, but as an organized kingdom of evil that stood in direct opposition to God. In medieval times, the fear of hell was a powerful motivator for people to seek salvation through acts of devotion. One popular practice was to embark on pilgrimages to holy sites, which were believed to cleanse the soul of sin and reduce time in purgatory, a concept closely related to hell. Pilgrimages to places like Jerusalem or Santiago de Compostela became popular as people hoped to avoid the fate of eternal damnation. This era saw the church further consolidating its power, as it could grant indulgences or pardons to those who undertook these journeys, essentially acting as a broker between heaven and hell. The doctrine of purgatory, a temporary place of purification developed alongside the idea of hell, often seen as a second chance for those who were not fully righteous but did not deserve eternal punishment. This idea gave the church additional authority, as it could offer masses and prayers to help souls ascend from purgatory. The financial aspect became significant too, as families could pay for masses to reduce a loved one's time in purgatory. The blurred lines between purgatory and hell underscored the church's influence over what awaited people in the afterlife. The Inquisition was one of the church's most powerful tools in enforcing orthodoxy, punishing heretics, and asserting control over its followers. Those deemed heretics were often accused of devil worship and threatened with eternal damnation. The threat of hell and its tortures became a useful device during interrogations and trials, keeping people in line through the fear of spiritual consequences. The Inquisition demonstrated the church's willingness to use hell not only as a theological concept, but as a psychological weapon to maintain its authority. Medieval and Renaissance art are filled with depictions of hell, often painted on the walls of churches to serve as reminders of the dangers awaiting sinners. These artworks portrayed horrific scenes of suffering, with demons torturing souls in grotesque ways. This hellscape in art was not simply decorative. It was a didactic tool to instill fear in worshippers. Architects even included hellish imagery in the design of cathedrals, making the fear of hell an inescapable part of religious life. Beyond art, literature from this period also emphasized hell's horrors. Stories like Dante's Inferno were monumental in providing a detailed, layered map of hell, describing various tortures for different sins. Through literature, writers could capture the imagination and drive home moral lessons about virtue and vice, further embedding the terrifying image of hell in popular culture. The Protestant Reformation brought a shift in the perception of hell. Many Protestant reformers, including John Calvin, rejected the idea of purgatory and challenged the Catholic Church's authority to control people's fates in the afterlife. For Protestants, salvation was solely by faith, not through church-mediated penance. This new interpretation of hell challenged the traditional Catholic doctrine, emphasizing personal relationship with God over institutional fear. Islam, like Christianity, has a concept of hell called Jahannam, a place of punishment for the wicked. Early Islamic writings on the afterlife influenced medieval Christian thought, as the two religions shared a cultural and intellectual exchange. The parallels in hellish imagery, flames, eternal punishment, divine judgment reveal how religious beliefs shape and reflect each other, adding layers to our understanding of hell as a concept not unique to Christianity. The constant reminder of hell impacted medieval society deeply, creating a culture of fear and caution. This fear kept people loyal to church teachings, but it also had social repercussions, such as widespread superstition and anxiety. The psychological weight of hell reinforced a moral code, but it also restricted people's ability to question or deviate from church doctrine, shaping social behavior and norms profoundly. The Universalist movement, emerging in the 18th and 19th centuries, challenged traditional views by suggesting that all souls would eventually be reconciled with God, denying the concept of eternal damnation. Universalists believed that a loving God would not condemn souls to eternal torment, sparking a theological shift. This perspective offered a more compassionate view of the afterlife, and represented a significant challenge to the traditional image of hell. In modern times, hell remains a prominent theme in literature, film, and pop culture. Works like Paradise Lost and Dr. Faustus portrayed hell in nuanced ways, making it a backdrop for tales of temptation, redemption, and existential dread. Hell, as a concept, has persisted, yet it has also evolved into something more symbolic, representing personal struggles or moral choices rather than literal eternal punishment. Many contemporary thinkers view hell as a metaphor for personal suffering, guilt, or separation from meaning. Hell, in this light, is not a physical place, but rather a state of mind or a consequence of living a life detached from moral or spiritual fulfillment. This philosophical perspective aligns with some early interpretations that saw hell more as an existential condition rather than a fiery pit. In recent years, fear of hell has been a reason for some people questioning or leaving their faith, as they find it incompatible with a loving deity. For some, the concept of hell is seen as manipulative, used to control believers through fear. Welcome to Blessovia Science TV, where we take you on an exhilarating journey through the cosmos and unravel the mysteries of science. We are excited to offer you the opportunity to become a valued member of our ever-growing community of cosmic enthusiasts and knowledge seekers. Exclusive access to cosmic content. As a member of Blessovia Science TV, you will gain exclusive access to a treasure trove of cosmic content, including documentaries, interviews with leading scientists, space missions updates, and awe-inspiring visualizations of the universe, live Q, and sessions with experts. Your membership will grant you the chance to participate in live Q and sessions with renowned scientists, astronomers, and space explorers. Get your burning questions answered by those who push the boundaries of human knowledge. Embark on a journey that spans the cosmos and join us in unraveling the secrets of the universe. Become a Blessovia Science TV member today, and together we will reach for the stars. Thanks for watching. Subscribe, like, and share. Don't forget to leave your comment.